In this video, we'll be covering Bitwig Studio's Dribble note effect. And like always, if you're a producer and you use this, please do write in the comments how you use it, how it's streamlined your workflow, or how it's kind of inspired you to do something new and creative. But going over the effect itself is actually going to be pretty quick and straightforward. So it does exactly what the name says. It's going to dribble the note until it can't really dribble anymore, and it's just like the ball is sitting on the ground. And let's go ahead and listen and visualize this. And that's not really realistic if you think about like physics, right? Like it would keep going a few more times, but that's where we come to the inspector panel, and you can see we have this like shortest bounce option. And this actually is a very important parameter on the effect, because if you want to go for more of like a zippery type sound effect, here's where you would use that. And then damping is, again, almost like the surface. So if you had like a hardwood surface versus a carpet, you know, the ball is going to stop bouncing at a different rate. So if we bring like our damping way down here, you can get a really kind of cool special effect there. And that's maybe the one way that this is something that you can do that with, that you really can't accomplish any other way, at least in terms of it being notes generated out. So if we go in here, and I probably would have to increase this even longer, but let's just see what comes out of it when we record the result. And I made a mistake there. Like I have this velocity coming out at full tilt. And that's the other thing with this that's actually very important, is velocity is going to play a huge role on where these bounces are occurring. And again, like we talked about like quantize and some of these other features, again, you might want to use that in conjunction with this, because it's very difficult to keep things on the grid after like the first bounce, if that's what you need to do. So just keep that in mind. Go back, watch some of the other videos that I just did, and you'll know how to do that pretty quickly. But if I do bring the velocity on this down much lower, the result is going to be very different here. You can see we almost got to that zipper there, and you can see the way the velocity is kind of trailing off here on that unique curve, and that's sort of what the whole dribble thing is, right? Now, again, I have this set up so that the velocity is not routed to the amplitude, so that the volume of the note's not changing, but we could do that, of course, and that would be more like realistic of a normal instrument patch that you would have. But I think part of the fun is actually going to be taking velocity and maybe routing it to a couple of other things. But let's go ahead here and just export this result again. Now it's going to be something much more standard, and I'll bring that up so maybe we can get to the end of the tail. Yep, there we go. And let's go and let's look, and you can see there at the end how the repetition of the note just really increases, and we can see what that curve is looking like there with the velocity. But maybe let's get a little bit interesting here, and let's route velocity to maybe the saw level, maybe this, maybe that, maybe a little of this. I'm just kind of picking random stuff, maybe a little of that. Okay. And now let's go ahead and we'll turn that off of the volume, and let's listen and hear the interesting result we get. Yeah, okay. So something like that is a way that you would get some variety, taking advantage of the velocity. The other option that exists in the inspector is the hold last note. And that just means when it gets down to its final bounce, and in our case, that's going to be when it's equaling 10 milliseconds, it's just going to hold that last note. So I'll just play a note here so that we can see that. And it helps to click it. So let's say you really did set something up that you're playing in real time, like having it hold might be very useful there. But you could hear how difficult that would be to actually nail in real time. So anyway, let's bring that back to its normal. Let's bring that back to its normal. And let's also clear out all of these velocity routings. And I'll leave that part in the video just in case you didn't know. You can just right click and then clear that stuff out. And we'll look at the timing. So we have a couple different timing options. We can either set the first bounce like in 16th notes. So here we're at a quarter note, 16th note, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You know, depending on what you want to do here. So that part's totally easy to understand. You can offset it by a percentage if you want to do that, if you're trying to get to a triplet or whatever. Likewise, you can just go straight into milliseconds. Now let's look at one thing that will be interesting here, though. I'm going to play a note very light. Now I'm going to play a note very hard. And you can tell that that timing is offset relative to the velocity. So this is only accurate if you're playing something in at full velocity. So let's go back here and yeah, let's set it to like a half note. And let's just put this all the way up at full tilt. And let's watch to then see where that first bounce is occurring. So let's just come back in here. Okay, everything looks good. Here we go. Okay, and then when we go and we look at the placement there, we'll see that that first one hits dead center, and then again, immediately it starts to go off. And that's just the way that this is going to work. There's not going to be a way within those settings to say, okay, lock everything right to the grid. You can obviously do that after. You can use other note effects. And then the damping too, if you notice, is set in a percentage. So here we are at 50%. Let's just change that to 30%, for example. And let's again watch to see where these come out. Okay. And again, we can see that first one's perfect because that came in at 100 velocity. But then, yeah, where these are going to land is going to be varied. And I would say like, oh yeah, like maybe you should try to stick to like, you know, 75%, 25, but you know, it really doesn't matter. It's going to have to be what's going to sound good when you're actually using this in context. So that is a look at Dribble at the top level. Now what we'll do is we'll go into the manual and we will see what suggestions they have for this. All right, so we're here in the manual. And again, I think the important thing to note is if maximum velocity is played, then you will get that accurate first bounce based on the settings that you have in there. But let's just jump into what it's useful for. So the first one says adding some trailing character to single note lines. So if we come in here, this is our little synth patch here. Cool sound. We can bring the dribble on and basically, you know, if we're playing very quick notes, you know, that are not going to like be held long enough for the first bounce to occur. Nothing really happens there in terms of the dribble, but I could sprinkle that in sometime. So it'd be like, and you could get kind of creative with this, and you could definitely modulate something like the damping. Or again, you could bring this down if you wanted to at the very end of your line, get a little bit of like a zipper effect happening. So maybe I would do something like this. And obviously I'd have to workshop that, but that's kind of the idea with that first use case example. And I could see somebody doing that because it's a unique way of adding kind of a tail just by taking advantage of notes. And you can always go in and tweak that after. Second example, giving per note delays to chords, especially when each note has a slightly different velocity. So what I've done here is I've cheated. I've just used scalar. I've dragged out like a chord progression here. And I'm going to leave this part in the video just so you could see the way that I would kind of do this quickly. So I've selected all of them. I'm just going to go into our velocity here, and we are just going to introduce some chaos and then kind of bring that down and introduce a little more chaos and bring them. Yeah. Okay. That works for me. Now, as we're looping this over, I am going to like adjust the settings a little bit so that we can kind of get more of the effect that they're talking about. But again, what you could do is you could automate this in real time. And I know we need a little more volume there. That's kind of cool. And then again, if we turn Dribble off, let's just hear what we get. I'm going to bring our tempo down a little bit. So I just wanted to kind of play around with the settings so you could hear kind of the variety you could get. And that's not really something that you could do just like with a delay or whatever. And I guess if we go here and we take a look at this output, which I will set up now. Okay, we can go in there and we can look and just see like, wow, like look at all of that great like variation in there. Not something that you could just easily do like with a delay effect, obviously. So that's a very unique usage of this, especially on its own, not combined with other note effects. So this next one, I don't really think we have to go over. It says creating a decaying organic note repeat effect. Basically, that is just like routing a bunch of things to velocity so that always that tail is going to look the same way as it like repeats over. So even if you had something like routed to like, you could say like reverb dry wet or reverb time, and like that velocity is routed to that and it's increasing or something, or like on a filter and that filter keeps closing down. Like you could do some very creative things if you wanted to. I'll leave it to you to experiment. And then the final one here says modulating damping to keep notes at fixed repeat lengths whenever anything happens, like the global fill button is engaged. So basically the way I interpret that is if you route the fill to the damping and you bring it all the way down, whenever the fill is engaged, you're going to have that consistent repeat. And then when it's not, you go back to wherever you have your damping set. So again, like that could be useful depending on the situation you're in. I'm not going to go through and show that with, like, I guess I can. I mean, it really doesn't matter. Like, let's just bring up the polymer again. You could do something like that and click it off in real time when you wanted it to trigger on. Not that exciting, but that could be a very practical use of it if you wanted to have that consistent repeat going on, and then right at the end, just have it, dribble out and go into the zipper. But while we're here, we might as well look at a few of the presets that they have. This one is called Different Gravity. basically it's not that exciting. It's just kind of a setting. Let's go to the next one, see if we get something a little more unique. This one's called Long Bounce. And again, nothing too exciting. This one's called Medium Zipper. And there you go. Again, that's similar to how we have set it up so far. 1 beat, fast bounce. And again, that's just like a setting that they've put in. There's nothing else being modulated on this. And I think the only reason why I wanted to show you the presets was I think one of them does have some modulation. It might be the last one of rhythmic bounce. This is quick zipper. So you can see that this time, instead of being set in 16th notes, they have just gone to milliseconds, and this is just going to be rapid. So that will work. Like, again, you could be playing a part in. It's just kind of a special effect. And then the last one, I do believe we do have like a random, or I guess it's a classic LFO, and that's being routed to both beats and damping. So as we're playing back, yep, we get something a little bit more wacky and fun. I'm not sure if that would be usable, but that is another example there where we can see that that's routed to both beats and to the damping to give you some variety. Now, that's going to do it for this video, but coming up pretty soon, we are going to have our Notes in Bloom video where I believe we'll be able to see how this dribble has been combined with some of the other note effects that we've been looking at when this was first released with Bitwig Studio. So thank you so much for watching. And again, if you have your own experiences using the dribble in other ways, please do share those in the comments. Thank you.